All right, cool. There we are. Is it, you guys see the recording icon as well? Oh, there we are. Cool. All right. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the third annual Passion Awards. My name is Kyle Ferdig. I'm the president of Omicron Delta Kappa on campus here. So the Passion Awards were started by the presidents of ODK, NRHH, and the Mortar Board, the three oldest honoraries on campus here. Fun fact is that if you look closely behind the statue of John R. Bookdole in front of Bookdole Hall, you actually see the honoraries' name sketched into the pavement. This year, we're recognizing both our 2020 and 2021 recipients, as last year's event had to be canceled due to COVID. Our partners this year include NRHH, Order of Omega, NSCS, IBA, and BGS. The event was created with the intent of honoring professors from across the campus who serve their students at the University of Akron so well. The Passion Award is student nominated, with each organization nominating a professor they felt made a significant impact on campus or in their class. So tonight we're going to hear from 7 professors. The first will be Dr. Bill Hauser from the Department of Student Marketing. He was nominated by Omicron Delta Kappa. Next we'll have Dr. David Martorelli from the Department of Chemistry, nominated by the National Society of Collegiate Scholars. Then we'll have Professor Thomas Fassel from the Department of Residence Life and Housing. He was nominated by the National Residence Hall Honorary. We'll have Dr. Chinchana Choksai from the Department of Marketing, nominated by Beta Gamma Sigma. Then Dr. Aaron Macarias from the Department of Management, nominated by Omicron Delta Kappa. And she couldn't be here today, but made a video for us that we'll play. We'll have Professor Elizabeth Rhodes from the Department of English, nominated by the National Society of Collegiate Scholars. And then finally, we'll have Dr. Mahesh Srinivasan from the Department of Management, nominated by the International Business Association. Dr. Michael Nelson from the Department of Economics also is a recipient this year. He was nominated by Order of Omega, but wasn't able to be here today. So we've invited these professors here tonight to thank you all for the hard work and to give them the opportunity to share their passions with all of us. And we're proud that each of our professors represent distinct and sometimes underrepresented colleges within our campus. So if anyone has questions for professors, we'll do a Q&A at the end. You can put your question in the chat along with who you're asking the question to. But yeah, without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Bill Hauser from the Department of Marketing. So if you have a PowerPoint, feel free to share your screen. Otherwise, yeah, the floor is yours.
No PowerPoint, so you have to see me for the next 15 minutes. Sorry, but first of all, Kyle and the rest of you, thank you so very much for nominating me for this award. I retired, I think, back this past July, but I'm still teaching part-time, so I'm not sure what retirement is yet. But I really can't think of a better way to retire than to be recognized by you. As you've heard me say in classes many times, students are the way, students are my life. So thank you all so very much. I'm going to, over the next, hopefully less than 15 minutes, it will be, I'm going to talk about specifically two of my many passions that are going to be related to pretty much academia and pretty much to all of the experiences that I've had in life and all that, and how they come together to form even more passions. I'm gonna let Sydney and the others talk about all that good cooking. Anyways, first I want to recognize my wife, Dr. Anne Marie Scaresbrick-Hauser, which I think everybody in the world knows as Annie, who after 34 years remains my passion of passions, if you will. Who would have thought that a new sociology graduate assistant from Ireland that I literally ran into in the sociology department would be my life for all these years later. Seriously, I was going into sociology. You're going to hear me talk in a couple minutes about my background in sociology too, but I was walking into the social department one night had the door partially open, and all of a sudden, kabam, got knocked over by this young lady, and been married to her mostly ever since. And I guess you could probably say, bad pun here, but I guess you could probably say I fell from her right from the start there. But anyways, also want to recognize Eric, my son. Like you guys, he's my daily reminder that our future is in very good hands. About 40 years ago, boy, my kid's getting old. He was born as a preemie weighing 2 pounds 9 ounces. A couple years later, my first wife died of cancer, leaving me a single parent with a 2-year-old. Believe me, you learn very quickly about life. Until Annie came in about 3 years later, Eric and I formed a very unique bond of a single father with a very precocious toddler. That bond is even stronger today. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and we all grew up in Akron, in a working class neighborhood about a mile or 2 south of campus. When I was a kid growing up, we called the area LA. Not to confuse it with the one out west, but the LA here was for Lower Akron. And I see a couple smiles there. Southerners have heard of it too. Good. We really didn't have much, but our mother, who right now tells everybody she's 95 plus, has this very strong passion for education. She wasn't able to get her nursing degree that she wanted during World War II. She had to take care of her family. And then when my dad came back from overseas, they got married. And a year or 2 after that, I came along. So she never was really able to fulfill that. But she instilled in us, in her 4 kids, that whole passion for education. We ended up with 4 BAs, 2 MAs, 2 MBAs, and a PhD, and not all with the same person here. Our kids have all got at least 1 college degree. I think you could probably say her passion was fulfilled. Well, I was thinking about my many passions. 2 kept on surfacing, so I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about them, if you would, please. They are, number 1, helping others, and number 2, as you've heard me kind of surmise here, on education. You're going to hear me talk about my academic and work experiences. I hope I won't bore you too much, but they all kind of, in my mind, come together to show where I'm at now, and where passion for those things has been much, much, much a part of my life. Academically, I'm a retired associate professor of marketing. I joined at CBA in 2003. Actually, I was originally brought in to teach some new course called e-marketing. Today, you'd kind of laugh. I don't think you even hear the word e-marketing anymore. And to help create the Taylor Institute for Direct Marketing, and then later the Suarez Applied Research Laboratories. Years after that, I became the Associate Dean and Director of Graduate Programs in a CBA, and came back to teaching a few years back. I received all 3 of my degrees from UA in sociology, hence why I'm talking about sociology, and then went on to do a postdoc fellowship at Washington University in St. Louis. Over time, I taught at Washington University, West Virginia University, and the last decade or so, along with my wife, I've team taught at the National University of Ireland in Galway. For those of you that are academic types, I spoke at numerous conferences, authored or co-authored over 25 publications, and currently have 6 books and hopefully working on a 7th. Earlier this year, I was extremely honored to co-author a book for safety forces, mostly cops and their families, with Dr. Bob Denton. Bob is a legend, as this is the man who founded the National Organization for Victim Assistance and became its first president. He, with a couple of his colleagues, actually did create the whole victim assistance movement in the United States, and probably in the world, on the back of a napkin. I know you've heard a lot of people say, they did this on a napkin. Well, I've actually seen the original napkin. Wow, that is amazing. He has a PhD in social work, has taught at the university for many years, He's an ordained minister and a reserve police officer and a longtime chaplain of the Akron Police Department. His work at the First Street Mission to meet the needs of safety forces and their loved ones is what I call passion personified. Bob's life is my role model of what's happening, helping others should be. His passion to help others continues to really rekindle my passions. Um, I'm currently co-authoring with Annie a book. I'm only bringing this up because of the time here. Currently co-authoring with Annie a book on applied sociology, which will be out by the end of this summer. Believe it or not, we initially wrote this book back in 1996, and it's still being used in many countries around the world. We were recently asked to consider updating the book. The real problem is that the examples and exercises are literally, think about this, are literally from the last millennium. Fortunately or unfortunately, the COVID pandemic has provided us with many examples that are understood globally, so many of our changes are in that direction. I've completed numerous projects, and most of them pro bono and this is where my passions really come into play, for social agencies and groups in the area. Some of these include, and I won't list them all, I see Dr. Owens out there. She could probably join me on most of these. But Project Grad, helping Akron Brooklyn high school students complete their education, and many of them go on to the University of Akron. The United Way of Summit County, with both their funding allocation and also, probably more importantly, with teaching a course for Akron citizens on how to do their own neighborhood research and development. The Akron Police Department, years ago, in redesigning their website and helping them with community relations. I think now that I'm retired, allegedly, I think I'm going to see if they want me to volunteer to help them again with the community relations side of it. Summit County Job Center, looking at current community needs and future employment trends. Summit FM Radio, looking at their members' attitudes and so forth, and probably more importantly, the whole area of their very unique program, Rock and Recovery. If you haven't seen or heard, I guess you can't see it. If you haven't heard this program, please get onto the radio station. It's a very specialized program for recovering addicts, alcohol and drug addicts. And probably the weirdest of all of them is I was asked a number of years ago by Stark State University in Canton to take their research in fuel cell technology and prepare what they called readable reports, not only to meet the Department of Energy and the Department of Education requirements, but stuff that also could be used by lay people, especially in the schools. As I see all of this stuff coming out about energy and electric cars and everything, I'm going to brag ever so slightly that I may have helped bring about the emergence of electric cars. And, small audience. Here we go. Anyways, my favorite student project was the Rock the Roo project. You may have seen, it's been a while, but you may have seen the kangaroo with the dark sunglasses on. It came out of one of our classes. E.J. Thomas was having problems getting students to attend, primarily because it was nothing wrong with the orchestra, but primarily because it was the orchestra, and primarily even the Broadway series were Broadway musicals that occurred 20, 30 years ago and just were not contemporary for the students. So it really wasn't a lot to think about, possibly doing more rock music and more pop music. We worked with the E.J. Thomas and started to bring in once a year. Well, first of all, we created the Roo logo and also did a website where students could go get current events and information and so forth, which actually ended up being the events page on the university website now. Gave away free Rock the Roo t-shirts, which I still see all over town many years later, and created the Boo at the Roo event for great event. I wish they'd bring it back for Halloween evening. Probably the biggest thing there was that the students got to learn how to really connect entertainment and this whole area to other functions here on campus. Very, very good. I still enjoy looking back at all of that. I just want to bring up one more project and then I'll move on to hopefully a few other interesting things. I really do take the most pride in being part of what is called Team Lemise. Lemise Elbatar, I hope some of you have met her. If you haven't, she's still around, please do. Is a kind, extremely intelligent young lady that we received in the College of Business via Fulbright scholarship a few years back. Lemise has a very pronounced facial deformity, which doctors in her native country of Egypt pretty much had given up on, with a typical Akron zip fervor. Now remember, I got 3 degrees from here and been around for years, so I had that fervor. The passion to help Lemise quickly spread across the marketing department with my colleagues, especially Dr. Deborah Owens and Miss Myra Weekland. We started a campaign to seek medical treatment for her in the U.S. It's a very rare deformity, if you will, and only 1 or 2 places actually in the world can take care of it. And fortunately, Boston was one of those areas. Our passion to help her spread quickly across campus and into the community. Bright Me, the marketing guy, coined the term Team Lemise, which quickly caught on and included faculty members, community leaders, then UA President Matt Wilson, and Betty Lynn Fisher, who I view as the top reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Many of you may have read or remember some of the articles she did in the paper on Lemise. We started a GoFundMe campaign to help Lemise with medical expenses, found doctors in Boston who could treat Lemise, helped her secure a place to stay in both Akron and Boston. I got to tell you, I love the fact that during a time when there was very strong anti-Muslim distrust in this country, members from churches, synagogues, mosques in the area all jumped in to help this young Islamic lady in need. I love Akron. People in this community are very, very special. Little update on Lemise. She's progressed through numerous procedures with more to come. This is going to be an ongoing event for her. While here, she completed 2 master's degrees. And recently, a local company offered her employment so that she can stay in the U.S. for additional treatment. Again, thank you, Akron. I just want to jump quickly over to a little bit on my experience side, and hopefully I'll tie this all together with some words of wisdom at the end here. The exciting part with most of these projects is that they were class projects where students not only got real life experience, more importantly, it ignited and sparked their passions for helping others. Our goal, in my mind, as professors, is to link those two together. My work experience is diverse because I have way too many interests through my career. I was fortunate to work in many areas while still teaching part-time. Kept me up to date and kept me hopefully relevant. Immediately upon receiving my bachelor's degree, I managed a grocery store and quickly found out that my first hour of work each week started with my 41st hour. That didn't last too long. After about a year, I went back to the university to get my master's and my PhD. During that time, I was elected president of Graduate City Council, and I'm proud of many of the graduate changes that we were able to create that still exist today. I left Akron to go to St. Louis and became a desegregation analyst for the St. Louis Board of Education. This is the early 1980s. We were trying to predict changes that were occurring in the St. Louis schools due to the white flight to the suburbs, the counties around St. Louis. I then became a senior researcher for a military contractor working in Army aviation and troop support. Well, Army aviation and troop support is pretty much helicopters, half tracks, and tanks. If you can imagine this skinny little guy who pretty much was out in front of demonstrating during the Vietnam War, working on Army aviation and troop support. It's a sight to behold. Imagine a 1970s hippie with hair down to his waist, going on bases and presenting to military brass. Fortunately, at that time they made ball caps big enough that I could keep my hair hidden under the hat, and really didn't get into a lot of trouble. But with the death of my first wife, Eric, my son and I moved back to Akron. I became the manager of market research for Rubbermaid and Little Tykes. I have to admit, it was a blast testing new products, especially at Little Tykes, because I got a chance to go into the daycare center and play on the floor with the toddler, testing those toys. Best job I ever had. I then became the senior vice president of marketing and marketing research and planning at Key Bank in Cleveland. As you can see, kind of all over the place. I know many of you think about your career, and I'm going to mention it in a few minutes. Please stay open and fluid to new ideas, new directions. I spent the summit, the best part of my career for the last 22 years, being a full-time faculty member at Akron. Sorry about boring you with the life of Bill or the life of Hauser, but I wanted to share how much of my life has been rich and diverse in a combination of all my key passions. Working with students at all these years helped me to create the future. Not my future, but hopefully their future. Now it's really immense fun to watch that future become real life. I really think helping others is not just a passion for me, but it's really part of my DNA. Whether it's Akron Public Schools, Summit County Fatherhood Initiative, Victim Assistance Program, so on, a Safety Forces Support Center, Furnace Street Mission, YMCA, to name a few. I've really tried to use what I've learned to help others have at least a little bit better life. The funny thing about these passions is that the more you do them, the more passionate you become. Now the sermon. I'm almost done here. As many of you know, my favorite saying is, so what? Those of you that had me in class or heard me say, okay, so what? You should be doing this right now. You should be saying, so what? And you should be saying, so what, as you develop and hone your passions. First of all, don't be afraid to take a risk. Use opportunities as the way to light your path. Of course, set those goals, but don't be afraid to change directions many times. In high school, believe it or not, my goal was to be a college professor. Over the years, many opportunities created many paths for me. Each path was ripe with experience, and each path was ripe with learnings. Yeah, I did end up as a professor, but one with much more than just book learning. Second, learn to be resilient. As you've seen this year, we've had to go through many changes, many of them totally unexpected. Take advantage of them. Yes, respond to the present, but prepare yourself for your future. Third, enjoy your life. Life should be fun. Passions are ignited and fueled by fun. Fourth, cherish your successes. This will add even more fuel to those passions. I'm going to say that again. Cherish those successes. I don't think we do that enough. And finally, and most importantly, celebrate the lives of those around you. Your passion for others will strengthen you. I like to view things in my life as writing a book. So I want you to view your life as a book in which you are daily writing about yourself. I am sure that every one of your books will, as I like to say, be a passion-filled bestseller. Finally, as we say in the household, onward. Thank you so much for listening. Please stay safe and well. And I'll turn it over back to Kyle.
That was great. Thank you, Dr. Hauser, for those words of wisdom. So next up, we have Dr. Matarelli from the Department of Chemistry. If you have a PowerPoint, feel free to share it. If not, we're all ears.
Awesome. I do not. I'm doing this all on freehand. So I want to thank everybody for this award. I'm really honored by this. I normally give talks on chemistry and my research, so this is sort of a new thing for me. I started thinking about what I wanted to say, a year ago. I was one of the 2020 awardees, and then the pandemic hit, and of course, so today's talk is going to be a little bit different because everything has changed, and for you and me. So the email I got from Kyle and the rest of the committee was sort of designed to, or it indicated that I should prepare a speech that was sort of what I was passionate about and maybe things that in my life that have put me to where I'm at today. So I'm going to try and talk about some of those things. I have a lot of things that I'm very interested in and passionate about, but today I'm going to talk about, and this is probably going to be a different talk than many of the others, the Grateful Dead, yoga, and some of the people and events that have shaped me and got to me where I am right now, and how I think about life and all of you guys as well. So I started listening to the Grateful Dead when I went to the College of Worcester. It was probably towards the end of my freshman year. I went to see them at a show, and I'd also seen a local jam band that played a lot of Grateful Dead called the Robros about that time. And I enjoyed the music, but it didn't really, grab me viscerally or anything like that. The following year, I was dating a woman, and I went to see the Dead again, and a housemate of mine named John Barnes gave me, or loaned me, I think, a Dead tape of the Grateful Dead's album, Europe 72, and which she did not get back, by the way. And it was about that time that I really started listening to the Dead in earnest. And it became apparent to me that the more I listened to them, the more I listened to various shows. There are thousands of Grateful Dead tapes in circulation of all the different shows that they've played over the years. And like I said, it became apparent to me that each song was played differently, and they were all significantly different than the versions that were on the albums. And as I started to listen, I started to recognize the different musicians and their instruments and how those instruments interplayed together. And like I said, the Dead did not play the same song the same way twice. There was always some creativity and spontaneity that took place in the moment. So the Dead created music based on a template, but then they expanded on that and went different directions. But they did it in a cohesive way. And the only way that they were able to do that is to truly listen to one another and be cognizant of where everybody was going, let that person go there, and maybe follow sometimes and maybe lead sometimes. But through that, they were able to make, at least in my mind, beautiful music. So the next thing, and I'm going to get back to that in a little while. I started graduate school at the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 1986. And my very first memory of that is being in the lobby of the Graduate Research Tower, which is where the chemistry department was housed, and seeing some guy who I didn't know who he was at the time, had sort of unruly, dirty blonde hair and big, bushy mutton chops, charging into an elevator and big, thick glasses, charging to an elevator. And in my memory, he was almost horizontal with the ground. His arms were outstretched, and his leg was trailing behind him as he was, trying to get his hand in the elevator door before it closed. And his name was Paul Lottie. He was a second-year professor of chemistry, and I joined his research group 3.5 months later. And it was the best thing that I have done it was the perfect thing for me to do at that particular time. I've always been very close with my parents, and I'm very grateful for them and for the way that they raised me, and for the examples they set for me. But working with Paul sort of took things to a different level. And the reason for that is that we had a very interactive relationship. He was an absolutely brilliant man, but the way that we interacted, and I think he interacted with all of his students this way, was as a collaborator, not as an instructor and as a student. And so no matter the fact of, how ignorant I was as a first-year grad student, we had one-on-one discussions that were one-on-one, that were very interactive, scientist to scientist. And I remember one time we were, it was early in my career, and we were talking about some spectroscopy that we were both sort of learning. And of course, I was eons behind him, but it was a very interactive thing. He treated me as an equal, and that was very important to me as a student. And after I finished my PhD, I went to do a postdoctoral fellowship at Ohio State University with a man named Matt Platts, who was also a professor of chemistry there. And Matt was the same way. He was a very smart person, but the way that we interacted was very collaborative. Except for the fact that I remember once I had just finished a bunch of work on a project, and the graduate student I was working with, he told us, and this was a Friday afternoon, instructed us to, start to work on a paper, and, maybe after a week or two we could, talk about it. And the following Monday we wound up with a first draft of a manuscript on our desks, and so much for that. But anyways, it was neither of these people taught me how to teach. What they did was they showed me how to interact with other people in such a way that I took home the message that if you respect other people and you treat them as equals, then you will get that respect back from them. And that was very important to me. And I've tried to bring that to my teaching and my research as well. And I've tried to become as good a teacher as each of them was. And one more thing about Matt. In 2000, I brought him up from Ohio State to give a seminar. And in that seminar, he gave a very good talk. And I told him that after his seminar had finished. I said, Matt, that was a really good talk. And he told me that when he was a young assistant professor, he would try and give very impressive talks so that he would impress his audience. And after a while, he started to realize that the best way to give a research talk was to tell a good story. And so I've tried to bring that to my interactions with my grad students or people I'm telling about my research, but also with my undergraduate students in organic chemistry. And if you've taken my organic chemistry class, you know that telling a story in an organic chemistry class is non-trivial. But I do try and tie everything together after a fashion as best I can. And I'm going to come back to this as well. But the next thing that I want to sort of discuss was when I moved to Akron in 1997 to start at the University of Akron. I had been a visiting assistant professor at Colgate University for 3 years. And while I was at Colgate, I had started cycling more. I had cycled when I was at UMass, but at Colgate, I was going for 10, 15-mile bike rides. And if you've never been to upstate New York, it's very hilly. And so it was, and the roads were, at least the ones that I rode on, were empty enough that I didn't have to worry about, getting hit or anything like that. And, problem is that when I got to Ohio, I found that the Ohio drivers are significantly less cognizant of cyclists than they were in upstate New York or Western Massachusetts. And so after getting off, run off the road a couple times and cursed at and stuff like that, I was fetching to a good friend of mine from Colgate about it, and she suggested I try yoga. And so I did. I went out and bought a couple of yoga tapes and started practicing on a towel that I laid in my living room in front of my TV. And I've always been into physical fitness, but yoga was something different. It really relaxed me, but it was also very physical practice, at least the ones that I was doing. And that relaxation was important for an assistant professor who's under a lot of stress. And I liked both those aspects of it. And as I sort of got more into my yoga practice, I discovered that there was meditation, that there was breath work to be done. And I eventually stumbled on the 8 limbs of yoga, which describe how one should not only treat oneself, but develop oneself to have kindness to oneself, kindness to the world around you and try and make the world a better place. And that interaction of self and the world around you is, in my mind, related, and the eight limbs of yoga is related to the Grateful Dead, who were 5 or 6 players who were interacting in a cohesive fashion, even though they were different and playing different instruments. Meditation is not the same as doing asanas, which is not the same necessarily as doing pranayama or anything like that, but nonetheless, they all work together for a common good and a common purpose, and a common direction. In 2011, my wife was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and she passed away in October 2013. She was the love of my life. We'd been married 10 and a half years, and it was a very difficult period. But shortly after she had undergone her first surgery, in February 2012, my mom had a severe debilitating stroke, and she was left unable to speak, paralyzed on part of her body, her dominant side, unfortunately. And so she couldn't live on her own, and I couldn't take care of her either at the time, and it was a full-time job. And so she had to transition into an assisted living home, and her husband was not present either. So she, in the assisted living, I would go and see her more or less every day, and we'd play cards. I think I calculated we played about 15,000 card games of gin over the years, and it made a world of difference to her. She looked forward to it, and I could see her eyes and her face brighten up every time I came in. And while I was there, I got to know some of the other residents who were there as well. And I've always smiled at people when I passed them and said hello. And the people in the assisted living home and then the nursing home really appreciated it. And I talked to them and I got to know some of them. There was a woman, Marie, who was probably about 90 or something at the time, who used to call me Dearheart and give me a big kiss on the top of my head every day if I was sitting down when I was there, because she ate with my mom. So anyway, so it was a really rewarding experience for me. And then COVID hit, and I was not able to go see and visit my mom, and I knew that she wouldn't last long because of, she was, I think, very dependent on me being there. And indeed, she passed away a month later, almost to the day. As a matter of fact, it was a year ago yesterday. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because in the last part of my talk is life is fragile, and there's not a whole lot of time. And so you have to, in my mind, find things that are important for you to do, and find things that you're passionate about and do them with gusto. And I remember shortly after the pandemic hit, I was talking with a friend of mine who is a musician, Leanne, and I have a lot of musician friends. And she was saying that, as musicians, they weren't able to play music anymore, and they weren't able to, at least not together, and they couldn't, play in front of, people. And they weren't essential workers. And I thought about that for a second, and it occurred to me that, there's no more essential person. Well, there are, but I mean, musicians are incredibly essential. They bring music, they bring light and energy and happiness to people. I don't know about any of you guys, but I wake up in the morning, the first thing that is part of my consciousness is this soundtrack that's going through my head. And the last thing that I see when I go to sleep, or the last thing I have going through my head when I go to sleep, is music. And it's with me constantly all day long. And I have to think that the more music that, if people listen to more music, the world would be a better place. And so I believe that musicians are essential workers. I believe all of us are essential in some respect. But getting back to that and trying to draw this all together, that relates to to people who are elderly. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen Brandi Carlile do her rendition of Hello in There by John Prine. She did it after John Prine passed away in 2020, August 2020. So YouTube it. It's worth the 5 or 6 minutes to listen to. But you know, the elderly have lived such long lives and have given so much and still have to give a huge amount. And you guys who are listening to this at some point or another are honor society members because you're very smart people. And, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that, you know, college, we teach you stuff in college. You don't do well in my organic class without knowing organic chemistry. But what I hope that I'm really teaching you is how to think. And I hope that that's what you're taking home with you from college. Is we're not training you to do something. We're training you to learn how to think for yourselves. And so when you go out and, you know, get a job, I know every one of you is going to do well and make your mark in society, doing whatever you choose to do. And like Bill was talking about, you know, please keep an open mind to things, but do what you're passionate about. Do what really grabs you and makes you happy. But as you do that, try and bring some compassion for the rest of the world with it. Try and do something, or in some way incorporate your work and make the world a better place, because the world needs that right now. And that all relates to the Grateful Dead, who were working together in synchronicity, and 8 Limbs of Yoga, right? Because everything is working to make people happy. Dead's music made me very happy. 8 Limbs of Yoga makes me happy, but it also gets pushed out into the rest of the world. And I'm reminded often of the story about the butterfly that generates a breeze somewhere and it's felt around the world. So, you know, every time, you know, I smile, and I hope you do the same, I like to think that that will propagate around the world. And I like to think that we can, you know, all at some point make the world a better place. So again, the other thing that I was going to say at some point, back when I was talking about musicians, my role, as I was thinking about musicians' role as essential workers, the best thing that I thought of that I could do was to teach. And I thought, I'm doing that already. I can be the best teacher I can be, and I can bring that to you guys. So I'd like to thank you again for this award, and I wish you all the best. And I hope that in my class and in maybe this talk, you've learned something that will help you in your career. Thank you. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Monterelli. You know, it was really great to hear about your passions in, you know, music, yoga, teaching, you know, how that's affected your life, and, you know, how that can, you know, affect ours. So yeah, thanks. Next up, we have Professor Fassel from Department of Residence Life and Housing.
All right. Well, thank you. I want to thank everybody, all the groups, for having us come in and do this. I prepared a PowerPoint for you to talk about my passions, and foremost, it's students. This is students on the left before the pandemic hit. Students on the right were after the pandemic hit. And so it was a whole different world being able to do things. I'm essentially a student activities director within the Department of Residence Life and Housing. I put on the programs and activities for all the students and the student leaders. I also coordinate the Emerging Leaders Program, which has been going strong for about 20 years now. So it's students. They make us who we are. And this is my 50th year. I first set foot on a college campus in the fall of 1971 over at Bowling Green. And since then, from Bowling Green to Ball State for many years, and this is now my 39th year here at the University of Akron. So I've had a lot of time to spend with student leaders, 50 years. I also ran the film programs It's one of my passions, but I'm not going to talk about film today. For 49 years, booking movies on college campuses. My first film was Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman. So one of the things that I love to talk about is all the entertainers that we've had, people that we've brought in on campus long before they got famous on TV. People like Dan Tosh and Retta from Parks and Rec, Carlos Mencia, Matt Franco, Lee DeWise, Javier Colon, who's the first winner, season 1 of The Voice, Carrot Top, who plays out in Vegas, Drew Lynch, and one of my favorites, this is Preacher Moss. A few years ago, he texted me on Tuesday night and told me about a new documentary that he had just finished working on, and they're releasing it. It's on Muhammad Ali, his life, and he's the narrator of the documentary. And he and I exchanged some words back and forth and talking about how cool that was. And then I was reminded that his comedy tour is called the End of Racism Comedy Tour, and what better time to be celebrating the fact that we need to end racism. So I'm sure he'll be booked here in the next year or so from RHPB. But I want to talk about something else. I have a passion for Walt Disney and all things Disney, especially Disneyland. So once upon a time, as they say in Disney speak, there was a kid in the 50s, me, who was a product of popular culture and the media. And I really got hooked on the Disneyland TV show that was put on in 1954, which was really nothing more than a big advertisement for Disneyland, which was going to open in 1955. In fact, the 4 segments of the show, and they alternated every week, were Frontierland, Adventureland, Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland. And those were all the original parts of the park that Walt opened. Later on, it became the Wonderful World of Color. And part of that, I think, was so that Disney could help RCAs sell color TVs. That debuted in 1961. The other show I remember growing up as a kid was the Mickey Mouse Club. It debuted on October 3rd of 55, the same day that another popular children's show, Captain Kangaroo, debuted. Both of them debuted on the same day. So that was my media as I was a kid. People asked me, well, Tom, what was your first Disney film? And it wasn't a feature-length film. It was a true life adventure documentary, a fantasy documentary called Perry. And Walt could make these documentaries very cheap. And that saved money for his full-length animated films. My dad says, hey, let's drive up to Boston. He was a graduate of the Naval Academy and was stationed up in Newport, Rhode Island. So he and I drove up and saw Perry. It wasn't probably much more than 5 when I saw that. But the first full-length film I saw was Peter Pan that Disney made. They would release films. The original release was in 53, and then they would re-release films about every 7 years. But Perry was the very first Disney film that I can remember seeing. Then my dad says to me in 1964, hey, why don't we go up, take the train, and go to New York? They've got the World's Fair there. He wanted to see the United States Pavilion as well as the Vatican Pavilion. And he says, I think I know what you want to see. And in 64, Walt Disney was able to test, and all of these got paid for by the sponsors, 4 major attractions, which he later brought to Disneyland within 2 years of the World's Fair closing. It was the Illinois Pavilion with great moments with Mr. Lincoln. It was the Ford Skyway, Magic Skyway ride, where they debuted the Mustang. It was Progress Land, General Electric, where they debuted the Carousel of Progress, which is still running down at Disney World. And finally, one of my all-time favorite attractions, and I know that people just can't believe it, but it's A Small World. And it was the last one that he took on. If the design of that was by my favorite Disney artist. Her name is Mary Blair. And look her up. She's a great artist. Walt Disney, I think most people would say that was his favorite artist, was Mary Blair. And she designed the look of It's a Small World. So then my dad says again in 1968, hey, we're going to take a cross-country trip we were living then in Wheaton, Maryland, and he was going to do his training before he went to Vietnam in 68. And so he got the 5 kids and a set of grandparents, and we took a cross-country tour, much like Lucy and Desi and Ethel and Fred took in the I Love Lucy show back in the 50s. And we wound up in San Diego where he did his training. And while we were there, he gave each kid where they would like to visit. My brothers wanted to go to Tijuana. My older sister wanted to go to the San Diego Zoo, and my younger sister wanted to go to SeaWorld. And he said to me, where do you want to go while we're out there? And I said, well, Disneyland. So that was my first visit to Disneyland in summer of 68. Since then, I've been to Disneyland probably about 260 times. I know that park very, very well. I've met some of the original Imagineers that worked there on that project. It's a great place. So if I fast forward a little bit further, this was my first film that I saw in college as a freshman. And it was sponsored by the English department on a Friday night at 6 p.m. Ironically, same time here we're going on. And it was The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And for some reason, my favorite Disney character was Mr. Toad. And so you'll see Mr. Toad spread out through this Disney presentation. And it was one of the package films. In fact, the last of the package films that the Disney studios made in the 40s when there wasn't much money and they were just trying to recruit what they had so that they could then release Cinderella in 1950. This came out in 49. So since college, I've been always interested in Disney films, read up everything. I have almost every book ever written about Walt Disney, about the Disneyland park. And now I go to fall of 2001, the year that the Emerging Leaders took place. And I always thought, well, is there a way I could kind of take my passion for leadership in Disney and work it with emerging leaders? And I wasn't able to right away, but it wasn't too many years afterwards. In 2002, I was able to take my family for the first time to Disneyland. I always felt student activities, you're here in the day, you're here for late night events, and I just wanted some peace of mind. So I took them all out for their first visit. I had been to that park several times, but and then that started their infatuation with visiting that park. And so that's how the family thing got started with that. In 2005, we were tasked with we had this thing called the 909 late night series, which we do a lot of comedians and hypnotists and magicians, whatever, at 909 at night. But we wanted to start something in the newly, it just came online, the Starbucks over in the Student Union. But the other groups didn't want to go at 909 for a coffee house. And so we thought something around 8. And then I knew that Disneyland was celebrating its 50th anniversary. It debuted on July 17th, 1955. And so I said, well, why not 717? And they bought into it. It's been one of our more popular series where we feature coffee house, spoken word artists, and it's just been a really, really popular series, especially here even in COVID. We've gotten groups online of 100 plus for some of those shows. So I didn't get a chance to do Disney in the fall class, but we added a spring class. That's what was missing for the Emerging Leaders program. There was no spring class, and people said we don't get together like we should. We should get together once a week, and so we developed a spring class, leadership principles and practices. And I thought, okay, I'll use the Leadership Challenge, which is a popular book on leadership, as a basis, and then I'll take in some other books on Walt Disney, and that's how I'll establish that course. And what I'm about to give you here in the next few minutes are some of the things that I tell people about the Disney experience. And so one is, I ask them, you ever heard knowledge is power? And I heard a speaker my first year of doing the emerging leaders that said knowledge isn't power. That's not true. It's the application of knowledge is what's powerful. And so that's one of the things we stressed, that Walt Disney was doing all this stuff for his people. We also talk about plussing. That was a favorite Disney term for he was always trying to revamp his park. And as you can see there, they've always got things up that they're redoing an attraction, they're adding to it. Another thing is that attention to detail is important in any profession. You go to a Disney park, everything is themed. The park benches, the restrooms, the trash cans. There's hidden Mickeys everywhere. And I'll show you a couple hidden Mickeys because I have a whole session on hidden Mickeys. I took my 6th favorite. And this is the fruit cart on Main Street. And I got down on hands and knees because I knew there was a hidden Mickey, a head and 2 ears. Is what you're looking for at the bottom of this fruit cart. The cast member didn't even blink. She knew that people did this all the time. And there's the picture of the hidden Mickey underneath that cart. This next one is the corn dog wagon that's at the end of Main Street. This was shown to me by an Imagineer who graduated from the University of Akron. He's an Imagineering down at Walt Disney World. And if you look carefully at that picture, the O in corn, the O in the dogs are the ears, and the D in dogs forms the head. That's one of his favorites. This is Mr. Toad. I told you I love that character. And if you look in the corner of his eye, there's a hidden Mickey. This is in Frontierland on the stage, and you're looking at the bottom, that little tiny rectangular gate down there. And if you look there in the bottom right-hand corner of that gate is a hidden Mickey. This is a sign in Frontierland. Most people walk by 50,000 a day. They don't notice, but there's a Mickey on the first floor of that Mark Twain. This is in Cars Land. The last one I'm going to show you is up the telephone pole that runs pretty much parallel with the spark plug sign. There's like a little knot, and if you look, that's the hidden Mickey. The other thing I always say to people is stay with your gut. Don't let anybody deter you from your vision. They told Walt Disney Snow White would not fly. No one would buy a full-length cartoon. They told him Disneyland wouldn't work. Everything was going wrong. It's not your typical amusement park. They told him the Matterhorn couldn't be built due to engineering designs. All of that proved to be false. The last thing I want to share with you is that my passion certainly revolves around family. And I tell students it doesn't necessarily have to be biological family. It's that family that you feel close to and that you feel passionate about. On the right-hand side of that picture is me and my daughter in one of the Mr. Toad cars. In the bottom left is a picture of my 2 daughters with one of the characters that's on Main Street. And the daughter on the left now works for the Disney Corporation. She's a production assistant for Blackish and Mixedish, and sometimes works on Grey's Anatomy. She took our passion out to Hollywood. She lives out there, just got married. The younger daughter on the right is going to graduate from the University of Akron. Both of them will be grads from Akron. They were both involved in Greek life. If you learn nothing else from this, let me go back to Chip and Dale. Chip has a black nose, chocolate chip. That's Dale. Dale has a reddish brown nose. So if you ever see him in the parks, you'll know which is which. Never discount networking. That's me in Walt Disney's office. I was granted a private tour of his office due to my daughter working Disneyland. I'll cherish that forever. In terms of family, I was taking pictures one day out in New Orleans Square, and that's one of the insurance plaques that they have in New Orleans. I saw this guy there. 50 people were mobbed around, all these teeny boppers and all, and usually the people that have the plaid jackets are with celebrities. And I said, who is that guy? And they go, oh, that's Scott Disick. He's married, goes out with one of the Kardashians. And so I thought, oh, I heard they were going to go down to the Jungle Cruise. So I followed them, and I want to stress the word follow. I did not stalk. And then these are people down there at the Jungle Cruise. They gave them a special boat, and I got some pictures of them in all their garb and all that. I'll end with this. This is one of the bricks that are out there in the Disney Plaza between the 2 parks, California Adventure and Disneyland. This is Tom Hanks's brick. I found this one day, and I don't want to be critical, but he's got some white stuff there on the bottom. And that's the Tom Hanks family brick. And this is how far he is from the main gates. This is the Fessel family brick from Akron, Ohio. And that's how close I am to the main gates. So find your passion, find your Disneyland, because then you can live happily ever after. Thank you, ODK. Thank you for everybody for the chance for me to talk to you tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Castle. It was awesome to hear about your experience with Disney. You know, there's so many stories and morals kind of wrapped up in that company. It's pretty incredible. So next up, we have Dr. Chinchana Chokchai. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
But yeah, from the Department of Marketing. So the floor is all yours.
So I have the slide. Do you see my slide?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming to my talk, and I actually enjoy listening to all the passions that have been telling me about. And the first thing after I got Kyle's email, I immediately emailed Logan. Like, all right, Logan, what kind of passions you want me to talk about? Because I have so many, and should I stay within professional, or should I talk about my crazy ultra marathon passion? So I'm gonna stay for the sake of professionalism. So I'm gonna stay with my professional passion that focus on research and teaching and how I involve with my students. And I've been thinking about how I should structure my talk, and I decided to start my talk with the definition of passion. So according to the dictionary Merriam-Webster, passion means a strong liking or desire for or a devotion to some activity, object, or concept. So I think about myself, like, how do I know if I am passionate about something? And it's super easy for me because I rely on my own body and body reaction. If I'm passionate about something, I usually get goosebumps when I talk about that topic. And if you took my IMC or advertising or digital marketing class, you will see that on the first day of class, in every semester, I tell my students that I love advertising, and I will tell you why. So I'm going to refer, throughout my talk, I'm going to refer to my passions as goosebumps, and you will understand why. So first topic that I want to talk about is my goosebumps in teaching. And Dr. Owen, who is here, thank you, Deb Owens, who is my chair, and she's my big supporter and throughout my career here at the University of Akron. I love teaching, and I'm not afraid to tell everybody that. And that's because I feel like this is the way that me as a teacher can make impact on somebody's life. Students like Logan, Tabitha, who I work with on the student research project, this is the real impact that you can see them grow from being an undergrad student. Who I have a student 7 years after he took my class still call me and ask about marketing questions. And this is something that I really enjoy doing, and I enjoy mentoring people. And Tabitha know because she worked with me on the student faculty research project, and she actually presented and won the Best Student Paper Award at the Marketing Management Association conference. And we worked together on the research project. And I also work, if you see on the screen here, I also work with a couple of students on another poster about the marketing class project, and they presented at the University of Akron Interdisciplinary Symposium and won the first place undergrad student paper award. So my passion in teaching revolves around advertising, and the class I teach is IMC and advertising. And that's also my passion in research. And that's because, when I start studying about advertising, I ask myself, why am I interested in advertising? And I finally learned about the psychology behind advertising and how advertisers can get people to buy the product or skip the ad. And that has become my own research interest and later become my dissertation. And I study consumer multitasking of why people avoid the ad and why people chose to do something else when the TV or the commercials are on the TV. So that's my passion about advertising and teaching. And the second goosebumps or the second topic that I want to talk about is my passion in research. And that's from my own background. I was born and raised in Thailand and in Bangkok, Thailand. So if you like Thai food or if you want to go to Bangkok, let me know. And I live in a couple of countries around the world. I live in Canada and I came here to the United States in 2006 to pursue my master and PhD degree in marketing. And so throughout my life, living in different parts of the world, I noticed different cultures that's going on. And I noticed that me as the Asian student who lived in the United States, which is a Western culture, I noticed a difference between the Eastern culture and the Western culture, and that inspired me to pursue my research in cross-cultural marketing. So I'm interested in how Eastern culture, consumers from Eastern countries and consumers from Western countries process information and how culture affects their behavior. I'm not sure if you guys have been to other countries in the world, but I'm sure that, if you've been to some countries outside the United States, most people I know from America will go to McDonald's. And like McDonald's is one of the first place that I go when I go to different countries. And why? Because I like to see different menus that McDonald's has in China, in Japan, in South Korea, in Mexico. And you can see that McDonald's is the best example of a company that understands the local cultures and adapt the strategy to its local culture and be successful in other countries. So this is the passion in research in cross-culture and diversity because I came from different culture and I noticed from my own experience living in different countries. The next thing I want to talk about is my passions in life. And, I can talk about this passion for 2 days and you guys are going to be bored with it. And that is because I'm interested in culture. We like to travel the world and we go to different places. My husband and I like to travel and we also like to eat and drink beer, right? So if you see on the screen, we go to different countries. We go to France, Germany. And one of the best thing that we like to do is we like to go to the local bars or local restaurants in different countries or different cities. And we like to talk to people and learn about their culture. And one of the best experience that I had was when I was in Berlin, Germany. And my husband wants to get this particular type of beer that you can get only in Berlin. It's called Berliner Weiss. If you like beer, you will have to try this. So we venture into a small part, like very local part of Berlin, and we ended up, at a beer store, which is a local beer store, and we ended up drinking with the local, with Germans. And, they tried to talk to me in English and explain to me about the local culture. And we actually had the best experience talking to local people and learn about their culture. So these are, because of my passion in culture, it affects my life and how I, live my life and my hobbies and interests. The next passion I want to talk about is my passion in giving back to the community. And I'm not sure if you have seen on the digest or, in some other University of Akron email, but we've been teaching a free Thai cooking class to everybody that is interested. And that's started with the lockdown during the pandemic, and my husband likes to cook and I like to teach. So we combine our passions and start offering a free Thai cooking class where we talk about our culture and we teach people how to cook Thai food like what we eat at home in Bangkok, Thailand. And the class has received a lot of good feedback, and actually Logan is always in the class, and I enjoy having Logan in class. So we teach people, and we have on average, the average class size of the quarantine cooking class is about 80 to 180 households. And we have people joining us from all over the world, from Greece, from Japan, from India, from Canada, from Mexico. It's global. And this is one of the best thing that happened to me during the pandemic. Even though the class is free, we also encourage people to make donations to the Akron Canyon Food Bank. And people have been telling me that they really like the class, and it's part of the best thing that happened to them during the pandemic is through the cooking class. So I have the open invitation to people who are in this seminar, the meeting. And if you are interested, please let me know. I can add you to the mailing list, or I can send you the registration link to the cooking class, which will be on the next Saturday at 5:30 p.m. So what do I learn about my passions and about something that I'm really passionate about? Throughout my life, I have failed so many times, and I know as the honor students in this room, you guys are smart and brilliant, and I would call you my A students if I have you in class. But a lot of things that happen with us who are A students are we are afraid to fail. We don't want failure, right? Most people who are good at studying or good in class, sometimes they don't want to take a risk or they don't want to fail. My life, I've learned that it's okay to fail. But every time you fail, you have to ask yourself, what do you learn from it? In Thai, we have a saying that say the failure is our teacher. So we have to learn to listen or learn from our mistake and make sure that we don't make the same mistake again. And, this is something, so just, don't be afraid to fail. Another thing that I learned throughout my life from being passionate about something is it's okay to feel stupid. A lot of times, like as an A student or a good student, you don't want to look stupid in front of other people. But in fact, stupidity can come with blessing. That is because if you think about it, if I know that I feel stupid about something, it means that I don't know about that subject yet, right? So I have the motivation to learn about that particular subject and to be the expert in that particular subject. So don't be afraid to be stupid or to feel stupid, because life is a learning process and we have to keep learning. And passions, throughout my life, passions help keeping me on track. Which means if I have passion about something, let's say I want to be the best teacher, right? In the world, that's my goal. I have to have passion in order to keep me on track. I can have students say that they don't like my class, they don't like my teaching. Even some people say that they don't like my accent. But if I keep telling myself that I'm passionate about teaching and passionate about helping other students, it keeps me on track, to reach my goal. And last, I would like to tell everybody, especially students here, that never stop finding your goosebumps. It's really important to have passions in life. Like when I talk about advertising, I still get goosebumps when I talk about advertising here. When I talk about culture, I get goosebumps when I talk about culture. So, if you can see the tip of the iceberg is your success, but what people don't see is your failure, sacrifice, disappointment, rejections. let's say that you get rejected from a job offering, a career or the job application, you have to tell yourself that, okay, you have to ask yourself what you learned from that rejection. What else can you do to change that or improve your, interview or job application process? So I hope that, thank you so much for nominating me to get this passion award. And if you see, I also have other passions that I don't talk about it in here because it's going to take 2 days to talk about my ultra marathon passion. But I hope that everybody find your goosebumps and let me know I'm open, and even though you graduated already, feel free to reach out to me and say, hey, Sydney, I have questions. Do you have any, advice for me? Because sometimes I get call from students who graduated 10 years ago and say, hey, Sydney, you want to go out for a beer? And I say, sure. If you are my student, I really like what Dave said in his speech that, he likes to treat his students as, like friend or, as colleague. And that's what I tell my students. I don't want to tell that they are my students, but they should be my collaborators or they should be my friends. And that's the goal. So thank you very much. And I'm going to end my speech here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was awesome to hear about your experiences around the world, how you've been able to use that in your career and your life. So next up, Dr. Macarias from the Department of Management. She wasn't able to be here today. I think she's having a bigger baby right now, actually. But she made a video for us. So I'm going to try to share that. Second. All right. Do you guys see a YouTube video?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Let me know if there isn't any sound, but we're going to give this a try.
There's no sound, Kyle.
There's no
Yeah,
sound.
audio not working.
No?
I can try.
Yeah,
Kyle,
Logan, if you could try that.
when you share it, there's a toggle button there which says share computer sound. You need to enable it so that the sound is playing through your computer.
Hello, I'm Dr. Erin.
Yeah, right.
Does that work?
Yep.
Okay. I'll go ahead and play it.
Hello, I'm Dr. Erin Macarius. I'm an associate professor of human resources in the Department of Management at the College of Business. And I'm sorry that I can't be with you tonight, but I just wanted to share with you some of my own passions, as well as tips and advice on how you can develop your passions as well. So I'm just going to share my screen and talk a little bit about how to combine passion with hard work to succeed. So there's this concept of grit that was developed by Angela Duckworth. And what's interesting about the research that Angela conducted and many others after her is that it found that this concept of grit, which is really your effort or your perseverance or you're willing to put forth that hard work, predicted success beyond your cognitive ability or your grade point average or any of these other kind of talent measures. So really, when we talk about developing our passion, we have to think about how we can combine it with hard work. So I want to talk about ways to do that today. Before I get there, I want to share with you some of my own passions. So one of my passions is, of course, teaching. And I teach in the area of human resources and managing people. And so this is related to organizational science and helping people learn about how to work more effectively. And as Adam Grant, an organizational scientist, would say, to make work not suck, right? And so one of the reasons I love teaching in human resources is because students learn skills in things like interviewing and resume development and performance management and negotiating salaries, all things that they can take and use on their career and help building their path for the future. And I also get to connect with students and see not only where they end up in that first job, but also as they continue to progress in their career. Another area which I'm passionate about is research, and I conduct research in the area of boundary management. So managing boundaries between work and life, organizational boundaries into and out of the organization. So looking at how companies can make process effective when selecting employees, as well as offboarding and helping transitions both within and outside of the organization. And then I also look at technological boundaries and how we can make remote work more successful and kind of manage the boundaries from working from home and in the workplace itself. The last area that I'm really passionate about is serving for the College of Business, the University of Akron and beyond. And one area that I do this is by advising the Society for Human Resource Management, which is the HR professional organization that allows us to connect our students with HR professionals in the community and build those relationships and network for the future. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my for my family, especially since in addition to my 3 daughters that you see here, I'm actually expecting another one very, very soon, which is why I'm not with you there tonight. And then, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is how can you follow your passion and really discover what interests you and how to develop those passions over time. So, one of the articles that I turned to here is one that was written recently by Dan Cable. He's also an organizational scientist. And it's in the Harvard Business Review and talks about what should you follow instead of your passion. And so he talks about following your bliss even through blisters. So what does that mean? In this article, he shares that the average person spends more than 90,000 hours at work, which is roughly equivalent to 1/3 of your entire life. So you're spending a lot of time at your job. You want to make sure that you love it, that you really enjoy what you're doing. But he also talks about, in addition to this bliss, you also have to search for things that might give you blisters. And what a blister is something that wears at you. It's something that, it might cause you a little bit of pain or challenge, but you still come back to it again and again and again. And so even if you don't succeed right away, even if you face problems or difficulties, a blister is really something that drives you, that causes you to work through that pain or those challenges to be successful. And so when you think about your bliss and finding your passion, it may not always be fun. You may come across challenges, but think about, what do you work hard at to get right, no matter how much time and practice it takes? And what are some of the things that get you up early in the morning or stay up late at night? Not because you have a deadline coming up or you need to finish your project or it needs to get done, but because you want to. You have this desire and interest to continue in that. So in order to provide some advice in following your passion and persisting even with those blisters that you might encounter along the way, I've prepared a couple tips related to grit, using this as an analogy. So what can you do to discover your bliss? One is to get involved, and this might be inside the classroom or outside of the classroom, of really being well prepared, doing your research of what are things that interest you, taking career inventories. When I was in college, I actually created a spreadsheet of, here are my potential career options, and rated them based on, what are the growth, what is my interest in this area, what kind of the earnings potential does it have, what's the demand for this position. So looking at various factors and really doing your research of, what interests you and what might you be really good at. And then getting involved involves participation. And that's not only in the classroom in speaking up and asking questions, also in your internship and staying engaged, and also in getting involved on campus and looking at, social fraternities and sororities, sports and athletics, service organizations or volunteering, or even those aspects of getting involved related to your major, I tell my students that they're not required to join the Society for Human Resource Management if they're an HR major, but they really need to build those connections and network with others and learn what it's like to be in that profession. It gives you a sense of how you might be interested in that particular field. The second, the R, is reaching out. So to discover your passions, make sure you're developing relationships with people like your professors. You know, I am thrilled when I get an email from a student that says, hey, I really am thinking about switching to HR as a major, or I really am looking for a job in this area. Can I meet with you for 30 minutes to pick your brain? Reach out, ask questions. Professors are willing to give the time. They've got connections. Another area you can reach out to is professionals. We've got a great network of advisory board members and people in the community that want to help. And, you know, they might be willing to have you shadow them for a day or just give up some time to tell you about their job and see if what they do is something that might be interest to you. And then be introspective. Think about how you can apply what you've learned in your classes. So don't just be in your classes to get through them to graduate or to get a good grade even. Think about on a daily basis of how do these concepts apply to my internship? How can I use them at my future job? You know, take good notes, because there are things that in the short term might not be as relevant to you, but later on in life you might turn back to, and in the long run are very relevant for your career. So try to think about ways that you can apply what you've learned. Also, the portfolio of things that you've been doing in your classes that you can put together to display your skill sets and see which projects or papers or those team projects that I know everyone which were the ones that you put forth the time and effort, not because you had to, but because you wanted to, that they really drove you to go back to again and again. Those blisters that, you know, maybe it was challenging and required a lot of persistence, but in the end, it was worth it. And you have a great product that you can now show off to employers and are really passionate about. And then the last is the T of time management. You know, think about how you can plan and schedule your time. As I do research on work life, I often tell people don't focus on balance, that there's too much going on in your life to put equal time into each area, but focus on the rhythm or patterns that work best for you. And you'll start to see where you really want to spend your time and what drives your interests. And then those priorities, set things that become more important to you as really things that you want to focus on for the future. So some of the takeaways for here, if you're thinking about the future of success, success requires both passion and grit. Your passion puts you on your right path, but hard work is really what helps you reach that destination. Sometimes people say that how to succeed in business without trying. Well, you know, I think the truth is really the opposite of that, that the secret to success is really trying. So combining those interests, that bliss, the things that you're very passionate about with the blisters or things that are challenging and make you work and persevere over time. And then I like to tell my students that if all else fails, you can't find your passions, you're not sure what to do, watch The Office and do the opposite of whatever Michael Scott does, and you'll be on the right path. So thank you again for the Passion Award. Thanks for having me here tonight, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for sharing the video, Logan. Great. So up next, we have Professor Rhodes from the Department of English.
Hello, everybody. And hey, gosh, how can I follow somebody who's probably in labor as we speak? That's a little bit, you know, a little bit much. But I just want to begin by thanking Omicron Delta Kappa. I really appreciate the opportunity. And then, of course, my NSCS officers who are amazing. I'm always just blown away by the efforts and the achievements of students. And I am so humbled, and I'm just incredibly grateful. In all my years, and I have to say, this is 3 decades, but Tom, I get it, like 5 wins for sure, but 3 decades of teaching. And I know you're like, wait, no, impossible. You look like, well, if we were face to face, you'd be like, oh, you're not a day over 30 I don't know. That number keeps changing over the years. And now I'm like, crap, that joke was so good when I was like 35. And I could say, yeah, I started teaching when I was 10, and that's why I look like this. And so now I might have to reshape that as we get started. But there's nothing, absolutely nothing better in all my years of teaching than receiving awards from students, because all awards are good. All of them, love them, never going to turn them away. But when a student makes the nomination, or students make the nominations, they're so far beyond anything else that anyone can receive. And so thank you all very much. I, of course, pull that same age joke, and I have for real since I was like 30. And I think there's a misnomer in this idea that they're like dad jokes that you get out of the way. I think they should be teacher jokes. And I want to change that. Like I'm really lobbying for that, because we are forced to stand in front of you guys and be like the entertainer and the really cheesy like jokester. So everybody looks at you like, okay, once in a while you get like that pity joke, and they have to kind of, respond, and they feel sorry for you. And believe me, we always appreciate that. So don't stop if you're that person. I will never complain about that. At any rate, so I completely digress, but as I said, there's no other more coveted award. So when Kyle contacted me, whatever it was, I was like, oh, I felt so honored, and I felt humbled, and all of these good things. And I was like, he said, speak about your passion, or, work to engage and talk about student passions. And I was like, oh, I'm in trouble, because honestly, and this is you're not gonna believe me, but you will by the end when I shall share all this with you. But it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, like a really long time, like junior high, maybe even elementary school. And like everybody had passions. And so when I was so we'll just start like with junior high. Like I have all these friends, and they're super passionate about things. My best friend was a poet. And let me tell you, she was like this fabulous poet, and she was super passionate about it. And I thought, okay, wow, okay, Terry's really good at this. And I thought, I'm kind of good at a lot of things too. And I would learn later, there's a real difference between just being good at something and being passionate about it. And I thought, you know what? I have a ton of hobbies, super involved. I play sports, I'm in community theater, play lots of instruments, student council. And I kept thinking, I'm like, is there anything here though that I would say is my passion? And I love air quotes. Sorry, I know they're super cliche, but I love them. And I thought, gosh, maybe I just don't really have a passion. I mean, I enjoyed all these different things, super committed to them, even pretty good at some of them, not all of them. But I never felt like they consumed me or my thoughts. Like my friends I saw, they were like, wow, I'm like super invested in this, and it drove their every waking moment. And I thought, wow, okay, maybe I'm just late bloomer, there's a lot that the world has to offer, of course, and maybe I just hadn't met my like all fulfilling passion yet. And so I'm patient, not passionately patient, but patient. And so by the time I was in high school, and we were all morphing into more, sort of independent, self-seeking humans, I was pretty sure that's where I was going to find myself. And so a lot of my friends who had sort of been without their passion in junior high, they were finding theirs. And so, okay, so for a lot of people, they were finding their partners. And okay, so that's a whole different kind of passion that I'm not going to talk about tonight. But certainly a passion. Others, they were looking at colleges and careers that they just knew were perfect for them. Their so-called niche. And it seemed like they were really confident in their passions or their decisions or their aspirations. And I was still sort of waiting around the corner, you know, like I felt like I was figuring out who I was, or at least who I thought I was when I was that age. But I don't know, I hadn't really like tapped into some particular flame that consumed me entirely or all of my actions. I was a leader in school. I loved high school. And so I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe that's my forte. I was student council president on National Honor Society, all these things. And I thought, that's me. Maybe I'll be a politician. But let me tell you, heart definitely not in that. It wasn't my thing. I was super social, so I had this, I don't know, this, everything about this whole passion thing feels like you're, you know, boasting, but I felt like I had a knack for making people feel good. I was kind of like the go-to friend for support or advice, and that's it. I was like, okay, I've got this. Like, this is me. And so maybe I'm a therapist. I'm a psychologist. This is what I'm going to do. I definitely could help people. And so I decided, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do because everybody's doing things, you know? I wasn't sure if it was my calling, but I knew or at least I felt like I had to identify something as mine, like so many of my friends, you know? I thought there might be something wrong with me because who doesn't, you know, have their, I guess, for lack of better words, like their thing, right? You know, people, you guys all know people who have a thing, like they're, okay, so Dr. Motorelli, he's a musician, or like there's something about music, or, you know, Sydney talks about her cooking, or, you know, Tom's been to Disney 260 times. That's a thing, like that's a real thing. And I was like all over the board. I was passionate about this and passionate about that and passionate about all these things. And I didn't know if any of them is something that I would have considered like a full passion, like my thing. My friend Terry, she's still writing her poetry, and Joe is a football guy, and Gina was saving all the animals. And I was, you know, I was doing a lot of these things. I wasn't playing football, but I was doing a lot of these things, but I didn't fall into like one particular place that I felt like, oh, wow, you have to have a solitary passion. I excelled in a lot of different areas, and I felt like I needed to identify with one or claim something that would ignite this spark. Like somewhere inside of me, there should have been buried this spark that was like, that's her thing, you know? So I just kind of kept looking. And so by the time I left for college, I was like, this is it. I'm doing this psychology thing. I'm going to counsel. I'm going to work with people. This is something I'm good at. I can do it. And so about, I don't know, June, did I change where I was going to go to school? Yeah. Did I go to Ohio State because it was my passion, like Scott or my roommate, Tiffany? Nope. It was kind of like one of those things where on a whim, I decided, oh, you know, I'd applied to a lot of different places. I'd been accepted. I thought maybe I'll go to OSU. It turns out, by the way, that was a really good choice at that point in my life, but I didn't choose it consciously. I wasn't like my friends who were like, I'll always be a Buckeye. You know, now I kind of feel that way. But then, you know, I didn't. At any rate, like always, I digress because it's just my nature. Also, for the record, teachers digress sometimes purposely. So if you think you're like winning by getting them off subject, sometimes they do it intentionally. Anyway, that's an aside. So I'm in college and I'm super excited because, as you all know, college opens up, oh my gosh, this whole new world and all these opportunities. And whether or not it was my passion to become a Buckeye, I became one. And I felt really good about that. Like I loved where I was, loved my people, loved my major for a minute. But then all of a sudden I had all these other insecurities because now, not like just high school sort of aspirations, I'm around all these college students who were, wow, just so good, right? They knew what they wanted. They knew what they had to do to achieve it. They were doing like amazing things, like you guys, like like Kyle, like Logan, like all of you. And I see it in my own students, like you are doing things. And I was like, that's me. I'm there. I'm going to help other people. I volunteered. I worked at the juvenile facility, at the jail. I was teaching, doing all these things. I took psych classes. I took humanity. I took a lot of classes, just like everyone, right? The problem, maybe it's not a problem. Later, I'll tell you it's not really a problem. But the problem then was that I loved all of them. Not the math classes. That's a lie. So I did not love the math classes. Sorry, my other folks who love math, not me. Not my passion. But I was pretty conflicted about all these other things that I was really loving. And so I was like, okay, you know, do I really want to be a psychologist? Could I commit like some of my peers to a lifetime of this? And then I was like, oh, you know, maybe I'll go to law school. That would like be this wonderful amalgamation of my desire to help others. I could keep learning, love learning, super passionate about learning, reading, love reading, writing, I love writing. So I was like, this is it. I'm gonna take care of this. I'm gonna go pre-law. I'm gonna double major because, you know, that insecurity thing and that overachiever thing says I have to have a backup plan. I think my dad might have said it too, but you know, no big deal. So I'm going to go to law school with an English degree, be in English and secondary education. So I could teach. I love people, you know, it's all these things. So I'm like, okay, I'm all set up. I have all this stuff going on and I loved college and I loved I went to marches. I had all these passionate feelings, but I'm still kind of waffling because I'm like, am I as loyal as my roommate when we went to jazzercise was really a thing in the 80s, by the way, friends. But like we went to jazzercise or aerobics, you know, and I loved it. But like Chris, she was passionate about it. And my other friends were doing things that were so compelling. And then I don't know. At some point along this big, long path, I decided that maybe my passion was being passionate about a lot of things. And I don't think that's the worst thing. And so I stopped trying to search for that one thing or that, I don't know, that spot reserved for me. And I kind of embraced this idea that I could be passionate about a lot of things. And a lot of you have said that tonight. And I love that a lot of people have acknowledged that because I spent a lot of time being very insecure about not having like that one special thing that drove me. And I decided, I don't know when, that maybe passion's not the same feeling or the same action or the same motivator for every single person. And I resigned myself to accept the fact that just because I wasn't backpacking across Europe didn't mean that I didn't love traveling or backpacking, because I do. And just because I wasn't eating vegan or marching for PETA, it didn't mean that I wasn't very strongly supportive of animals' rights, because I am. And just because I didn't attend every single rally or march or sit-in, that I didn't support civil rights, because I really do. And so I figured out that like maybe the goal is not to worry so much about what they were or giving a name to them. And at some point I figured out, wow, you know what? I went to graduate school. I had this career I loved. I am passionate about teaching. I love my students. I still love my students every single day. I'm still excited about it. I was building a family and I love and am passionate about my family. And I felt pretty complete at some point. I didn't go to law school. And that was okay. I didn't love it and I didn't feel that passion, but I do feel, you know, the strength of the classroom. And I love being in front of students and I am where I'm supposed to be. And I guess, so what I want to leave you with, and I know I've been talking forever, there's not necessarily some clearly identifiable way to define what your passion is. And you might be one of those people who's found his passion. Maybe you're like, Tom, you love Disney and you've done this, or Sydney likes a lot of things too. So that's good. But you might be somebody like me who just decides that, wow, you know what? I'm kind of ignited by a lot of different things. And that once you stop searching or expecting like some aha moment where there's going to be a solitary moment where you're infected by something, that it'll just kind of be there. And maybe you'll be like me and you tell really bad jokes to incoming freshmen who are super excited about figuring out their own passions. Or maybe like somebody like Kyle will contact you one day and say, hey, why don't you talk about passion? And your mind will explode and you'll say, hey, it's okay if your passions change, or that you have a number of them, and that there's no shame at all in turning new corners or finding different passions. And that, I don't know, maybe life kind of demands them. And I guess I'm always left with this idea that if we don't agree to change and accept new things, and we don't open ourselves up to those, that we'll never really grow. So I guess the final words are that passion is dynamic. It's diverse, it's personal, but it's public, and it's very prolific. So I don't know. That's me and my crazy world. But thank you all again very, very much. I'm very humbled. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Professor Rhodes. Yeah, enjoy life, stay open, do what you like. I like that message. So the last speaker we have tonight is Dr. Srinivasan from the Department of Management.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. So let me say it's an honor, to be nominated for the Passion Award, and I'll definitely share some of the things about my passion. But like everyone said, I'm really thankful to you guys, the students who are in the audience, and the ones who'll watch this later on, because I don't want this to sound cliche, but I hear NPR a lot, and I pick something through NPR, and I'll say, to you students, we're here for you and because of you, right? We wouldn't have jobs, and nothing we do would be meaningful without you. So thank you again, and thank you for making it worthwhile and meaningful. I do have some slides. I don't have a script in there. I'm just using that for visuals, so that I can show some pictures and talk about this. But are you seeing my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so I couldn't come up with a shorter title, so I just put my talk as what I learned by waking up one morning and decide to move 10,000 miles away from home, right? So I'm associate professor in the College of Business, and I'm also the director for the Institute for Global Business. So what is this whole deal about moving 10,000 miles away from home is? Well, I'm originally from India, and right now I've still not lived half my life. So nothing to hide. I'm 48. I've lived in the United States for about 41 years. 21 years. So, when I was about 27, like I said, I decided to come to America, and America is 10,000 miles away. And when I came here, I knew nobody in this country. Well, I had one cousin, who just come about 2 years before me to Boston. And right when I came, I had one more cousin who came at the same time to grad school here. So really, I knew nobody. So I'm going to show you some pictures. So this is my visa stamp. So for those of you who don't know, being Americans, and if you got American passport, you usually don't need a visa to travel. to most places. It's very easy. But coming to United States from India, I needed a visa to come here to study. And when I came here, so I'll mark something. So the date on the visa, I got my visa on November 29, 1999. It was a different time, I'll tell you. And I know many of you students here probably were maybe born, I don't know, not even born at that time, right? Was different time, and especially to come here as graduate student was quite different. Um, so when I got this visa, and you can see, the other timestamp, I entered the country right before the new millennium, right? 27th December 1999. I actually entered in Houston because I had a friend. Well, I should say I did have a friend who studied with me in college, and he kind of motivated me to come. He came 1 year before me. He came to grad school in Texas A&M. So, I got the visa. So let me go back when I got the visa. It's very interesting. There were a bunch of people who got visas, and it's not easy to get an American visa, or at least it was not at that time. And it was it was a reward. It was an achievement, right? So when I was collecting it, I heard people saying, "Well, be careful of your passport because your passport with that visa could be worth a lot of money." And what they were getting at is, people will take that and they can first things, they can put their photo on your photo, they can, do things, and then they can illegally come in, piggybacking based on a visa. And I heard that, oh, I could actually go and sell this and make money. I said, no way, I'm not doing that, right? I was, for me at that time, the more cake. So remember, at this time I was about 27. I just turned 27, and I'd worked for a few years. I'd finished my undergraduate degree in engineering, worked for a few years, and the more kick I got was going into work the next day. My boss, I went to get my visa, I think it was a Monday, and I just had to call in sick because I couldn't say, I'm trying to go to America, which is I'm going to leave my job. I didn't want to say that. When the next day, my boss was a little upset, and I said, boss, I'm quitting. I was shocked, but that gave me a kick, at 27. Now, don't get me wrong. I left on good terms. I'm still in touch with my old coworkers, including my own boss. I still talk to them, but it was like, hey, I'm going. I'm going to America. This land of opportunity. It was quite a decision. But was it really that I woke up one morning and did this? Well, yes and no. I mean, you don't really wake up. I mean, there's a little bit of thought which goes in. Now, let me come back to that, right? I'd never traveled internationally before that. I was 27, never traveled internationally. I had a chance to travel a few years, about a 1 year before that. So I got a visa, to travel to Singapore from India. Actually, my dad, he was going to visit and he said, I could go. Um, but it never happened because his business trip got canceled. So I had a visa stamp in the passport, which I could never use. But instead, I went. India is a very large country, and I grew up in Western India near the city of Mumbai, a little far from Mumbai. It's a smaller city. But at that time, I actually said, okay, if I can't go to Singapore, I'm going to go to New Delhi and Agra, and that's where the Taj Mahal is, right? I visited Taj Mahal. It was a different culture, it was a different experience. I said, great. Well, let me back up even more, right? When I was 16, I was finished 10th grade in high school. And I'm amazed how my parents allow me to do this. Like I said, I grew up in a city near Mumbai. Many of you know Mumbai. It's a city of 20 million people, very crowded, and I lived about 100 miles away. And I told my parents one day, me and my friend from high school, we want to travel to Mumbai. And they allowed me. I was 16, and my friend was 16, and we two traveled to Mumbai alone. So I know right now my kids, and my wife, they're watching me. They're in the other room. My eldest daughter's 16, and she's going to be like, "Dad, you did it. How come you're going to stop me?" Well, that's a different story. Anyway, So what I'm saying is, I did get adventurous, and it was an adventure, going all alone, just, two guys who were 16, traveling from this small city, which is like Akron, a little bigger, and then going to a city of 20 million people. 20 million means that city has a population which is about 60 times that of Akron. These are real pictures. And by the way, on the left top, it's people waiting for the train. On the right, it's when the train arrives, good luck trying to get in. And the worst thing is when you're in the train, if you want to get out, if you don't know which side, you need to get out at, you're toast, because the train starts 30 seconds. You're not going to have time to, if you're on the wrong side of the train, you're not going to have time to get out. All kinds of adventures. Okay. So 16 again. But like I said, it's you don't, it's not like I woke up one morning, but it was a sudden decision, when I think about it. So I came to America. Well, let me back up a little bit. I came to America, like I said, and it was interesting. It was a different cultural experience. I mean, I can share a lot. Even I'd never seen snow. I came to Penn State, where it snows. It's pretty cold. I traveled to Penn State on 1st January 2020, the first day of the new millennium, right? To start my spring semester. Cold, different experience. The first time I saw snow, I can still remember. I didn't know how to behave, like, can I walk on this white stuff? I'll just share one more thing. Um, I went to we had the student union equivalent, at Penn State. I went there, got pizza. And then I went up to the lady and said, where's the sauce? I want the sauce. She said, it's on the pizza. I said, no, no, no. Where's the sauce? She got all confused. I got confused. Well, basically, two things. In India, some people have ketchup with pizza. It's odd. I don't anymore, but I lost that habit. And people don't say ketchup. They say sauce. It's a different cultural thing. Versus, sauce here means something completely different, right? I mean, you put the sauce on the pizza and then cook the pizza. So anyway, she didn't realize that what I really needed was ketchup. And if she did, she'd have been even more confused. Why is this guy trying to eat, ketchup with pizza? Anyway, um, when I was in the US, my first international trip was to Mexico. So if you can see, I circled, I had to get a visa. This was a research project I was doing as a master student. So my advisor, took me to Mexico, and there was one more, we're visiting a business there. So there was one more person who took us. We flew to San Diego and then we went to Tijuana, but we went to visit a business. And the interesting thing is I had to get a visa, but when I entered Mexico, nobody checked my visa because who cares? Who cares, of people coming in from America into Mexico? But sure enough, so I didn't have a stamp on my visa that I entered Mexico. And I was all worried because what's going to happen when I come back? Are they going to allow me, And then sure enough, when they came back, they wanted to check everything because now you're coming back from Mexico into the US, right? So this was 2001, right? So travel to Mexico. And then I was a grad student, then I got my PhD, and those who got your PhD will tell you that uh, the tough years, you go through a lot of things, you start doubting yourself. And then I came to Akron in 2007, got my PhD, came to Akron, and then I had my next chance to travel abroad, which was in 2010. So what I circled is what's called as a Schengen visa. So this is a visa you need to get if you're entering Europe, right? And Schengen is basically the countries which have free travel in Europe. Okay, it's not the European Union, but something equivalent, right? 2010, but I'll tell you, I wanted to go to Italy. I had everything booked, and I'll tell you, the few days before I was going to travel, I felt like a kid in a candy store. I couldn't sleep. I was excited because I've never been, I came from India to US, never been anywhere. Tijuana really doesn't count, and I was all excited. But before that, so my visa was about 11 years, before today, right? I had my first trip planned to Europe. But before that, I also traveled. I also got a Canadian visa. So that summer, I traveled. This is to Vancouver. So that's 7th May 2010. I entered Vancouver, 3-day trip, for a conference. Then I went to Montreal. In between, by the way, I went to Toronto, but there's no visa stamp because I guess the Canadian people don't really consider you're coming from America. Toronto's like you're still, you're not really going anywhere abroad. But Vancouver, Montreal are pretty different. Okay. So bottom line is I had to cancel my Italy trip because it got really busy. What they say is life happens. I had a second kid who was just about few months old. I couldn't do it. But I went to Montreal and it has got a lot of French flavor, right? And then what I'll do is I'll fast forward directly to 3 years later, I got the chance to visit France. So those of you in France, Eiffel Tower, that's the Notre Dame, that's Palace of Versailles, Arc de Triomphe, Louvre Museum. I mean, seeing the Mona Lisa, the painting, not the real Mona Lisa. But then, so this was in 2013 when I got my first chance. Remember Schengen visa, I had to get a visa again because again, I still had an Indian passport, so I just couldn't, I have to get a visa. It's not straightforward. So I could go to, I visited basically France, Netherlands, and Belgium on a 1-week trip, right? So entered Europe on 31st August, uh, 2013, and then came back about 1 week later. So those of you know me, I love trains. What I love about Europe is, the trains are wonderful. When I get a chance, I'm always traveling. Visited some really beautiful places. That's the headquarters of BMW in Germany. Some really fantastic places. Anyway, so then that's when my love or my passion with visiting Europe started, right? And then I was lucky enough to go back again 2 years later. So this time that stamp is from the visa from the Bundesrepublik of Deutschland, which is Germany. So I was lucky. So what happened, I'll fast forward. Within about 2015 to about 2018, with a period about 2019, about 4 trips, I was able to visit about 8 countries, right? So Germany, Czech Republic, Italy, actually Venice. I've still not been to Rome. Austria, Denmark, Copenhagen, Sweden, Switzerland, and Spain, right? And then when you put the 3 countries I visited before, so about 11 countries, within about about 5 to 6 years, right? And a lot of this has been possible, because some of I do go to Germany. I teach in the summer, so when I'm there, I travel. So I'm a little lucky, being able to do this. And then Belgium, like I said before that, France, Netherlands. So what that developed into is I said, okay, I'm visiting. I love this place. I said, I see the value. So when you travel abroad, right, you experience different cultures, you meet different people. It just changes you. I'll tell you, it completely changed me as a person, gave me very different perspectives. And I said, how about our students get the same perspective? So actually, I took students on 2 study abroad trips to Germany. So these are some actual pictures. We visited a beer garden, students in our partner institute in Germany, visiting cafe, a bakery. It's very different. A trip around on the train. This is visiting the Audi headquarters and the Audi factory. And by the way, that's my family, right? So this is my family from 5 years back who joined me on one of the trips, and I think they were smitten by the love of traveling in Europe too. And by the way, I'll tell you, they all look much more beautiful, 5 years hence too. So they're really, I mean, so you can see, traveling is my passion, but my family is too. And there are some really nice stories actually. 2015, the first trip we had a couple meet. They were both from Akron. They'd never known each other, and they met on the trip, and they're actually married right now. And I've got many different unique stories, taking students, what they learned. 3 weeks I could see that students coming back, they completely changed, right? While in Germany, when I teach in the Erasmus program. So these are some pictures. So I tell students, when I go there, I'm a professor of Indian origin who's made America his home, goes to Germany to teach and teaches an Erasmus program where you usually have students from 8 to 10 countries. I said, how exciting and how more global can it get, right? I mean, it's amazing. Okay, so these are some pictures. I've got students from all over, Taiwan, other parts of Asia, China, all over Europe when I go and teach there, right? And this is pictures. I trained them on a competition in Germany. They won something, so really exciting. What I had the chance to do is I teach in the supply chain area also. So when I do that, I'm a little bit of a nerd when I do that, right? So I visit some, the port of Rotterdam very much applies to logistics supply chain. My last trip, the port of Hamburg. So what's my passion, right? So what am I talking about? All this. Well, my passion is so as director of the Institute of Global Business, my passion is to promote more of study abroad opportunities, for students in our university, in the College of Business, but within the university too. Now, of course, this has taken a hit, a little bit in last year and this year with COVID and Corona. But we've done trips. I've tried to see what we can do for students. And here's what I want to say for those young people who are listening. So I've not traveled a lot, by the way. There are people who've traveled much more than me, right? I started late. Okay, I didn't start till I was in my 30s, right? And there's always a trade-off between time and money. When you're young, you maybe have the time, you don't have the money. But then, when you get to where I am, you've got reasonable money, but you've got other responsibilities. So what my advice is, do this, travel the world, do it, find the money. What I do is I try to be frugal. My family will tell you that I'm probably true frugal. I try to be frugal, and make it worthwhile. So every time I'm saying, okay, if I'm not getting cable, I'm saving $1,000 a month. That's going to pay for my ticket to go to Europe. That's how I start thinking, because basically travel creates memories, right? And it's all about creating memories. And I'm someone, who believes the stamps in the passport kind of tell you, your experiences that you can get in terms of traveling. So this is where I'll end, and I'll end with saying this, that it's said that, and I'm a little bit of spiritual person too. And it's said that usually we're human beings on earth on a spiritual journey. Well, you probably heard this. We're not. I mean, what I think is we're spiritual beings, on a human journey here, right? And when I say that, we're here, trying to figure out, again, right? I mean, we come, we visit the earth, we go back, right? But you want to make the maximum of the time here, the maximum time in terms of your spiritual experience. And it's not, there's a difference between spiritual and religious, right? I think when you meet people, when you experience things, it develops you as a person, you develop more so-called spiritually, right? So again, remember, we're all here as spiritual beings on a human journey. So that's my passion. Hopefully, I don't know how many of you will be here when we got our next study abroad, but some of you can make it. But do it. Travel the world, get out of your comfort zone, and you'll be amazed in terms of what you'll learn and what you'll find. Okay. So thank you again. And I know we're getting to the end, so of course I'm going to hang around if there are questions. But thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. It was really cool to hear about your experiences around the world, and how you've been able to share that with others. So I'd also like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank everyone in ODK, as well as NRHH, Order of Omega, NSCS, IBA, BGS for making these awards possible. I especially want to thank Tabitha and Logan for the time they put in here, helping set this up. I'd also like to thank Jacob Schall from Student Life Marketing for making our event posters. And of course, I'd want to thank all you professors here tonight. You know, none of this would be possible without you all. We wouldn't be here. Yeah, thank you so much. So this concludes the Passion Awards. You know, if anyone has any questions they want to ask, you know, we can stick around. I'd love to, you know, have a conversation. Yeah, I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you. And Kyle, you can probably stop the recording if you'd like.